You've mentioned this phrase a couple times now, unacceptable risk. What would happen without the $20 million increase that you're asking for and the $7.4 million that Olivia Chow is putting forward?
And that $20 million really represents my operational capacity to hire police officers and civilian professionals to do the most important work that we need done that presently we're not successfully achieving to any reasonable standard Torontonians have.
What is the right response time and what's it going to take for Toronto Police to be able to hit that mark?
When we looked across the sector, 6 to 12 minutes was the general range. The next worst time was 12 minutes. Our police service board in the 90s had a 6-minute goal for priority 1 response. So I think there's a conversation to have about what levels of services people want in the city. We're having that discussion on transit. We're having that discussion on housing. I'd suggest it's time for the Toronto Police to be part of the discussions as it relates to what Torontonians expect of their police service. I can tell you, 22 minutes when people are scared in their homes from somebody who's broken into their home is not what Torontonians expect or deserve.
And you were asked repeatedly, if you got the $20 million, would that response time come down? And you said you couldn't say. So why would the city give you $20 million extra if you can't commit to the fact that that number would bring down the response times and correct this historic problem that we have?
There are many variables that impact our ability to actually bring response times down. We saw last year, we increased our staffing, but the calls for service into our operations center grew by 18%, 19%. So while the city continues to grow exponentially, we're not able to keep up with the growth and demand that the city is making of the Toronto Police Service. This is as a result of 10 years of constrained spending. 4 of those 10 years had 0% budgets. We had 2 years of hiring moratoriums in 2016 and 17, and these are now catching up to us. The city has grown exponentially while we have been reduced in size. Just to visualize this a little more succinctly, we are 37 police officers larger than we were in 1999. So I just pause for a second, have Torontonians reflect on that.
Back at that time, there was $500 million. Now the Toronto Police gets more than $1 billion. How can that only support 37 more officers?
I think when you look at the finances of a city and you look at all the city budgets, which we are a decreasing percentage of, by the way, we have gone down to 9% of the city's budget from 11%. So we're actually a decreasing portion of the city budget, but inflation, cost of living, all are factors in collective bargaining agreements, all are factors that contribute to the cost of services in the city.
I mean, I did a straight up inflation change though from 99 to now, and it still wouldn't equal over $1 billion. So there would be the argument that you have more money, there's just a better way to allocate it so that you can have more boots on the ground and a more efficient service. What would you say to somebody trying to make that argument?
Well, I think we have to look at the totality of the financial pressure. We are an organization that is bound by collective bargaining. Our members can't strike. Our members live by collective bargaining. We're an essential service. There have been obviously collective bargaining agreements over the years that have impacted the financial picture of the Toronto Police Service, but that applies for all sectors across the city spectrum.
A coalition of groups, actually, 9 of them. They're called the Care Not Cops Coalition. They're gathering just today, having a rally out front of City Hall, and their argument is that the police service, in fact, needs less money and putting it into social services, homelessness, shelters, breakfast programs for kids, that kind of stuff. And their argument that they're laying out today is that if we take money away from the police budget and put it into social services, then your officers can focus on more of that organized crime, bigger crime, and the response times would come down and the city would be safer. What do you say to them?
The Auditor General spoke to this specifically and acknowledged that this is not a lift and shift exercise. There is a need to invest in other sectors to ensure that people get the right care when they need them. We are part of a continuum or suite of care in community safety and well-being. There are other services that are absolutely required, and we completely appreciate and understand that. But the Auditor General, in reviewing our organization, made it very clear that any savings that may happen as a result of alternative service delivery requires a reinvestment in the Toronto Police to focus on core services.
The way that the council now works, given the new powers and the strong mayor situation, if she wants it, she'll get it. So likely the $7.4 million is what you're going to end up getting. How are you going to make sure that that unacceptable risk doesn't happen? What are you going to do to to counteract that.
What it's going to cause is for myself and the command team to work with the executive leadership group of the Toronto Police and identify what other essential services we are going to cut. And there's a number of areas where we'll have to examine carefully. I'm very concerned about that because one of them is things like proactive traffic enforcement and neighborhood community officers, both of which people want to see more of, both of which are a concern to residents where I visit each and every day. And those are areas that are at risk. If we're not able to get to our priority one calls in a timely manner, we're going to have to examine the redeployment of people from other essential services, which is, again, creating an unacceptable risk for us as an organization.